Hello, it's Noel Garner here from Cambridge Art Academy. This afternoon I'd like to say a few words about sketching birds. What kind of approach should you adopt, and right now something about the equipment that you need to take with you. I've just come off the Cambridge busway, which goes through the countryside from Cambridge to St Ives and goes through this lovely bird reserve. You have to ask to be dropped off, and so I've spent a happy hour or two doing some sketching here. It's a bit windy and blustery, so now I've come onto the sunny side, which is also a little bit more sheltered, just to talk to you for a moment about sketching birds. So what's the minimum kind of equipment that you need? Well, at the very basic, all you need is a pencil, a fairly soft pencil, and some paper to draw on. And I would suggest that if you're going to be painting birds, there's a number of things to think of. One is that if you have some paper that is a sort of a buff colour and you're outside, you're less likely to scare the birds off. You know, if a piece of white paper hits the sun, they might scare off. Secondly, I've got a couple of rubber bands here on either side, because particularly if you're holding a pair of binoculars, then you can't be doing with your piece of paper flapping over. It's got to be nice and flat. Better than that though is to have a book like this, a sketchbook of cartridge paper. That's what I recommend, which is spiral bound. Perfect, just folds nice and flat. I've just been doing some sketching over here. Actually, I've been using an old fountain pen of mine. Where is it? Which has just got ordinary fountain pen ink in. Nice thing about it is that, of course, it's not waterproof, so if I want to smudge, I can do a little lick and it'll spread out a little bit. Speaking of binoculars, well, any pair will do really, but most bird watchers use 8 by 42. That's but I don't want to get too technical about it. All I would say is that it's a good idea to find one that has a wide field of view. Birders are often focusing onto a single bird in great detail, but we as artists, we're thinking as much as anything else as the setting in which we find the bird. Often it's the reeds and the branches and the grasses and the relationship perhaps to some other birds on the water or something like that, which makes the picture a sort of a whole type of thing rather than just a portrait of a bird. A very good idea on binoculars is to have a tripod. One thing about a pair of binoculars, it's a good idea to make sure that your binoculars have a thread here that will take this sort of bracket, because this bracket will then slot onto your tripod, and the beauty of that is that you can then be hands-free looking through your binoculars back to your drawing, and it's really nice and steady as well. Now if you want to do a little bit of colour, I would suggest either a few coloured pencils, but if you fancy watercolour, and a really nice way of doing birds is to sketch in pencil and then wash it with some watercolour. And I've just got a small kit here with me. I've got some watercolour paper here. I've done a little view over the other side, but again, cartridge paper will do fine, or Bristol board A4, not too big because you want to be carrying it in your bag over your shoulder here. Often it's nice to be in a hide where you've got the comfort of a seat and a table in front of you, But often, and I think the nicest bit really is to be out in the open and pick your spot. And you've got your tripod, maybe have a little seat with you as well, and away you go. So I've got my small watercolour kit here, which has got just a few colours. Actually it's got more than you need for doing birds. And I've got my flask of coffee if it's cold, gloves if it's winter time. You want to be, and a hat, and maybe a little bit of food as well. If it's cold like it is today, you want all the sustenance you can get, because of course with painting it's not like walking. When you're sitting down, you're using no energy at all, so it's easy to get cold and then you feel a bit miserable and you want to go home. I've got my hat over here, so I'm nice and warm. Got my gloves as well. Brushes, well, I have a small selection. Well, I've got a large selection. This is the kit that I use for larger watercolours, but if I was just coming out birding and sketching birds, I'd probably just have a smaller selection than that, just for the sake of not carrying too much weight with me. And the same with water, just a small water carrier. I mean, this is not full-blown watercolours. This is sketching in pencil or pen and then adding a little bit of watercolour to it. Another tool which I find quite useful is Pentel brush pen. Again, very, very compact. There are times when all I'm carrying with me is a pair of binoculars. Forget the tripod, forget the watercolours. I've just got a small pad, small drawing pad like this, and a pencil, and maybe a pen of some kind. And that's really all I need.